In this video, I wanted to take a moment to just talk about the GUI of Auto-Tune. We'll take a really quick look at some of the preferences, but it's worth noting that we're going to get into further detail on a lot of these things later on in the series. So to start off, this is the way that Auto-Tune Pro is going to look when you instantiate it in your DAW. Now I'm running the AAX version. In my particular case, I'm running Pro Tools for this video series. But depending on your specific DAW, you may be running an audio units version or a VST version as well. But they're all going to generally look the same. So if we take a look over here, you'll notice that we have our main area where we can see the pitch correction that's taking place. Now, in addition to that, we have some basic parameters when we're looking at the auto mode. So we have our retune speed, we have our flex tune, we have our humanize, and we have our natural vibrato. Now I'm currently looking at the basic view, but if I wanted to view the advanced section of these parameters, I could go ahead and toggle this advanced tab. Now when we toggle this advanced tab, we have some more options. We're going to take a look at these in a little bit more detail a little bit further on. But for the basic view, this is essentially what we see. So some things that I want to point out right off the bat over here is that we have our settings in the top left. We are going to be focusing on these in a different video. But the main stuff that I kind of want to point out here is our input type, our key, and also our scale. So for example, if you happen to know the key that you're working in, it's very easy to be able to set a key of, for example, C, and I could choose major, or maybe you know that we're working in D, and that could be minor. And then as you know, we have certain keys that become grayed out over here because as long as we input the scale into Auto-Tune, Auto-Tune is going to be conforming the pitch of all of the sung notes to fit into this scale. Let's go ahead and just turn this back to C, and we'll go to chromatic for now. Now, another thing to point out as well is that we have our auto mode, which, to be completely honest with you, this is the preferred method that I like to work with when using Auto-Tune. But in addition to that, we also have this graphical mode. Now, when we enter the graphical mode, we have a different style of pitch correction in which we can manually edit all of the notes that are being sung using the different tools available in this section over here. Again, this is something that we're going to focus on a little bit later on, but essentially, it's good to know we can toggle this tab to switch between those two different modes. In this section over here, this is something that will allow you to revert to a legacy algorithm that was used in, I believe it was Auto-Tune 5. Where it had a really certain sound to it. It was kind of like a granular type processing effect that it did in addition to tuning the vocals. Now, some people doing vocals, especially people using it for creative intent, happen to really like that sound. And it was so popular that they actually brought back this algorithm. So you'll note that if we enable classic mode, that we lose some of the functions here that are available in Auto-Tune Pro. This classic mode is simply reverting to a legacy algorithm that was previously available in different versions of Auto-Tune. Now next up, we have the formant control. So essentially what this allows you to do is once we enable this, we can adjust the throat parameter. This can be incredibly useful for creative effects, and this is something that we're going to take a look at later on down the road. But in addition to that, this is also something that can be done if you're doing drastic pitch corrections and you need to essentially alter the throat length so that it sounds a little bit more natural. So, funny enough, it can either be used to make something sound more natural when doing dramatic pitch adjustments, or conversely, it can also be used as a creative effect to add a really interesting throat effect to vocal lines. A good example of this would be if we take into account certain modern pop hits in the likes of Dua Lipa, where we hear these certain one-shots of the vocals, where they have almost a slow down effect where they're deeper in pitch, but they're actually still sung in key. This is something that we can use that effect for. Now next up, we have the transpose function, and this select pitch shift interval in semitones. This is useful if you needed to, for example, take a vocal performance and move it either up or down by one semitone. Maybe you have a bunch of processing that's already in place, and you just need to essentially offset the pitch to fit in the key. This is what we can use the transpose for. Then we have our detune, so we can move up or down in terms of our tuning increments. And this is switchable between a couple different parameters, and we'll be taking a look at those in a later video. And then last but not least, we have the tracking speed over here. Now, this is something in general that it sounds great at 50%, but this is something that we can adjust if Auto-Tune is having a hard time in terms of detecting pitch on the vocals that you're running through. So that's pretty much it as a basic GUI overview. Now, like I said, it's worth noting that once we get into the graphical section over here, there's lots of different parameters, and we're going to take a look at all these tools in detail. And it's also worth mentioning that some of these parameters might change depending on the settings that you use. That's also something that we're going to be focusing on in a later video. But in many ways, this is the main window that you're going to be working in. And if you choose to use Auto-Tune in the automatic or auto mode, which to be completely honest with you, does a really amazing job in terms of giving you great results if you're looking for transparent pitch correction, or also if you're looking for some really drastic pitch correction that's done for creative effect. This is the main window that you'll be working with. All right, so I think that pretty much covers it for the GUI. And like I said, there's definitely some different things that come into play when we go into the advanced view, for example, and some of these parameters, but that's something that we're going to leave for a separate video. But in the next video, I want to take a look at a new utility plugin that comes bundled with Auto-Tune Pro that can really help when you're working with Auto-Tune in terms of setting the proper key for your song. So we'll catch you for more in the next video.